Welcome to ImpactX Studios, where we spotlight founders building solutions rooted in real world impact. Today, we're joined by Shriti Pandey, founder of Structure Eco, a civil engineer turned impact entrepreneur who left her career in the US to tackle one of India's biggest environmental challenges. After witnessing stubble burning firsthand in rural Madhya Pradesh, Shriti set out to transform agricultural waste into sustainable building materials, creating eco-friendly panels that reduce carbon emissions while reshaping modern construction. Let's dive in. Hello, Shriti. Hi. Hi. Welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you. So, I'll give you an introduction of who we are, and I think we have had some conversation on LinkedIn earlier as well, right? I believe so. If you know that ImpactX Media is basically made for impact startups like yours who are actually creating something for the greater good. And you are right up there. That's why we reached out to you and we wanted to know what your product is all about and where do you stand in the market? What is your story? And what is the impact that you are planning to achieve? Right. So I'll give an introduction of Shriti to the audience. So Shriti is representing Structure, which is a company which makes straw-based structures, right? If that is correct for you. I'll give you an introduction, which is she's a civil engineer and an impact entrepreneur. She is from Gorakhpur, India, who earned a BTech in civil engineering and MS in construction management from New York University after graduating in 2016. She left a US job to spend a year as a SBI Youth for India Fellow in rural Madhya Pradesh, witnessing stubble burnings, devastation firsthand, which inspired Structure Eco. A Forbes 30 under 30 Asia honoree as well, TEDx speaker and fellow with Echoing Green, Acumen Unreasonable, and Molago Foundation's Henry Reynolds, which is she bootstrapped her venture with 10 lakh rupees. So that's another story that she has. So give us a structure. Let's go back to the first part of the whole thing. So how did you start your journey? What was your pull that put you into this line of thought when you were designing something for your future?
It was honestly, Arjun, not as part of my planning for the future.
Right.
I was very much in the US for more than 3 years between 2014 to 16, and I was planning to actually continue. I had gotten my H-1B visa.
Right.
So what happened is I took a very early sabbatical and decided to do a year-long fellowship, the SBI
Right.
Youth for India.
Right.
And the fellowship was the experience that gave me the opportunity to witness stubble burning. And when I witnessed the stubble burning, I spent a lot of time with the farmers, closely understood the problem.
Mm.
It made me realize that the problem is big, but there's also a massive opportunity. And that's where I felt that, there is genuinely um, a unique opportunity with India, not just a massive opportunity to do something with this stubble or otherwise agriculture residue and make something that addresses the global greenhouse gas emission of carbon um, and construction sector.
Hmm. So, what was the product? What did you come out with? So, what is
So after the fellowship got over, I spent a year almost doing R&D and product development. And what we came up with is essentially an engineered drywall material. So it's essentially a board, similar looking and use case to a plywood, MDF, plasterboard. Um, it is made out of 96% natural fiber. So just for context, your plywoods and MDFs have usually around 80 to 75% wood fiber, and the balance is resin or glue. We have the maximum amount of natural fiber content, which is 96, and the rest of the binder is also a non-added formaldehyde based binder. And together, using hot press technology, we create the panels that go into a building for all kind of interior applications, starting from your walls, ceilings, soundproofing, furniture, and we're also working on great flooring applications right now.
okay, flooring as well. So, what I understood from your product is that it is basically false ceilings and interior designing. So, anyone who's looking for an eco-friendly way of changing their brand with interior design made from biodegradable material, you are the person to go to, right? And what is the material overall? So, this is sometimes. So, what are the varied materials that are going into this structure that you are building? So these plies that you are building. So is it only bamboo? Is it only waste from farm straws? And what else can you combine together to become a structure?
It is only two raw material predominantly. One is straw, which is the leftover residue of rice or wheat cultivation,
Right.
which is 96% by weight.
Right.
And then 4% is a binder that doesn't have any toxic or VOC emissions. So those are the only two raw material that goes in.
Right. So when you say these raw materials and you make a product which is sustainable, for a buyer, what are the kind of cost implications that he has when he's going for sustainability with you? So as compared to the legacy systems that they put, how do you put yourself against the legacy products in the market?
So when we started our structure, we were about 20% expensive than plywood in the market. But today, as we speak, our product is at par and priced for your high density, moisture resistant panels, and they are competitive to plywood easily by 5 to 10%. And secondly, the GST on a product is 5%, whereas 18% on plywoods, MDFs, and HDFs.
So in the end, the cash situation is similar and now competitive to general pricing of a project, right? For an interior design. Right. Amazing. So that is where I think the main part of any product is to beat the legacy system for expansion and kind of adoption. So what kind of companies have already booked you? So are you north based of North India or are you South India? How are you structured in your terms of regions, right? How do you deliver your
Right.
product? Yes.
Right. So right now, structure has two markets. One is the domestic, and another is overseas.
Amazing.
So in India, we are headquartered out of Delhi, and we have a presence with our own sales team or partners who represent our product in all tier one cities. So Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, as well as Kolkata. And we have our own inventory in our own leased warehouses available in Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore. Besides that, outside India, we have in last 12 months done orders where we have supplied a product in full container loads or part loads to Singapore, Germany, Italy, and UK as well. And currently, we have a full-time distributor based out of Milan in Italy for the European market.
Right. Amazing. So your structure is there, your distribution is already sorted. How long have you been in this business now that you have been delivering such this?
In terms of commercially being present in the market, I would say we've really been present since 2020, but then obviously 2020 and 21 was COVID. So while we were present in the market, we could not really, meet any architect, builder, or interior designer. So a lot of sales that we did in 2020 and 21 was to CSR organizations and to support government with the hospital health infrastructure. So full focused on the current audience that we have has been from 2022 onwards. For last 3 years, we've been supplying in all of these 5 tier 1 cities in India as well as exports in last 12 months.
So when you do the distribution, at what stage do you enter for the planning of a project? So is it at the time of design, or is it at the time of sourcing, or is it at the time of execution by just replacing what they were already designing? What has been your journey till now? So what have you entered as in the value chain?
Right. So till date, all of our sale in India has been project driven, which means that we get specified into a project by an architect or an interior designer. So we do meet them at the design stage when they are closing on the specs of the interior of the building in terms of what will go in wall ceiling, furniture, soundproofing, all those applications. And then when the project gets to the construction stage of the interior, that's where the contractor reaches out to us to take the material because we are specified in the project. So our sales cycle is essentially ending at the design stage where we close or get into a project, but the procurement happens easily another 30, 60 days later based on the scale of the project. When it has to go in from the new financial year onwards, this year, from April onwards, we will start having presence in trade as well. So we're going to start holding inventory of a material with distributors in about 10 to 12 cities starting this year. So then the product would be available even for very small, requirement as little as 1 sheets or 2 sheets in local tier 1, tier 2 cities where a lot of small scale arch contractors, they do not, like in India, not every project has an architect, a green consultant and a contractor. Often small scale contractors do everything. And in that case, you can't meet everyone in India with the scale that we have. So and these people have long-term relationship with the distributors in the cities. So having a product present with them, the physical visibility will help them to also know about it and take it and use it.
Okay, okay. So you're finalizing the distribution for someone who can take in bulk and then sell it across to different markets. They have that kind of
Yes.
capability in logistics, right? And the logistics part of it, the storage and the warehousing of it, is it owned by you or is it in the value chain? The distributors directly take it from you. You have just-in-time storage. What is the kind of storage kind of?
So for the project sales, it is direct, which means the product goes from a factory or through a leased warehouses. But for this distribution or trade channels, we will essentially the distributor will be holding inventory and like anywhere starting with let's say a full truckload, which might be anywhere between 400 to 500 sheets, valued around 7 to 8 lakh rupees. And then they will sell that, and on a rotational basis, we'll keep replenishing the inventory as they keep selling.
Mm, mm. So, looking at your, so let's go back to your story, right? So, how you have you've been involved in the ecosystem, and how did you get into the line of this, right? So, I read about that you are an NYU construction management graduate, and then you are also you had a project with wind turbine proposal for Central Park that you worked on while you were in the college. Is that true? If
Yeah,
you work,
I was working essentially with the MTA, which is the Metro Transportation Authority,
right,
in New York after my schooling. So we
right.
were part of a project management firm that would support them with engineering, scheduling, and project management.
So, what is the main understanding from moving from a renewable energy kind of interest while you were in college to a materials movement in college? What binds this story together?
I mean, one is obviously the experience that I mentioned, the rural, but more. I mean, the project was one of the projects that I did at my work, but majorly I studied construction management. So I studied a mix of engineering and business. So we used to have classes on entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, and parallelly have classes on BIM and construction engineering.
Right,
So I
right.
think that interest that there is an opportunity to do something. And secondly, when you look at the market, like at the end of the day, in any economy, the biggest industry is construction. The amount of building materials
Right.
that are bought uh, on a daily basis and consumed, it's just enormous. And then with the current tailwind, when I was in the US, I could see that in Middle East, Europe, as well as US, then the opportunity that was there for sustainability as a niche category. So we felt that yes, in India when we started, which was 2018, we were early. But we do believe that another 3 to 5 years, India will be far more mature with its understanding. We've already seen progress. And while that happens, we have opened the global market as well for us, which is already mature. So we can tap into that, keep building our business, and be one of those early companies present when that right policy shift happens in India.
Correct.
We're definitely seeing that getting closer and closer in the right direction.
So, are you also, because you are into sustainability and sustainable materials, are you also looking at certifications for your company, like a B Corp or something like that in terms of materials and something like that? Are you looking for certification?
So our products do have compliances. So
Okay.
we have our compliance for VOC, toxicity. We have gotten a life cycle assessment done, which is accounting for the carbon footprint of a product right from the source till it gets manufactured. So we'll be one of the few companies in India that have that. We are in the process of getting our environment product declaration as well.
Amazing.
We have pro certification in India, which helps a product support green points for an IGBC certified building. So yes, we definitely have green compliances and certificates.
Amazing, amazing. So your product is stationed very well in terms of sustainability. You have the third-party approvals as well. You have a product which has shown its mettle in terms of the over a period of time you've been able to make a market out of it. So give me an understanding of what are your numbers right now. Are you cash positive? Are you profitable? What is the stage of your company right now?
Sure. So in last 4 years, cumulatively, we must have done above $1 million in revenue. And this year we will do close, like the financial year that's ending, we'll do close to $500,000 with being cash positive. And for the coming year, we are aiming to do anywhere between 11 to 12 CR as well, with easily more than 5% uh, net profit.
Yeah, with a 5% net profit as well, right? So that is a good sign that obviously you started with a bootstrap approach at 10 lakh. That is the story that is yours, right? So you started with a 10 lakh rupees and you made a product. So what was your journey that about, and what were the challenges that you faced, and how did you reach from 10 lakh to 1 million of a sale last year, right?
So, honestly, when we started, yes, as I said, we had a paid up capital of 10 lakh, which was again sort of crowdfunded through a lot of women in my family, my mother, sister,
Yes.
and aunts. And what we use that money for is to support ourselves to do research. And obviously, that is not enough money to do research and create a new product. So we collaborated from day one for almost everything. So we collaborated with labs in India that supported us to do R&D. Uh, a lot of the grants that we got, they were in the initial year. So from 2018 to 2021, we got about close to 250K, which is almost 2 CR of grant. I applied for a lot of American global fellowships and pitched our idea, which helped us to raise the initial capital without diluting it all, and get to a stage where by 2022, as I said, we had a commercially ready product. We had done close to 1 crore in sales, and that's when we actually raised our first, um, fund through investors. Until then, the entire product development, commercializing, and the first 1 CR of sales happened through a bootstrapped manner.
So your first round, how much did you raise, at what valuation?
So we had raised about close to 2.6 CR, and yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't disclose the valuation because we're
No
already
worries.
into
No worries.
the round.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we did actually raise a lot. We only raised 2.5 CR. So if you look at the split, it's almost 50-50. We've raised almost equal amount of money from grants, while
Right.
the same up through equity. So we have really been very, like, uh, intentional in only raising equity when we need to grow, which is
Right.
right now.
Right.
But otherwise, we have really taken support of a lot of government schemes, incubators, accelerators, both in India and outside.
Right, right, right. So are you raising in the future as well?
Yes, we are right or raising a seed round. Yes.
Okay, you are raising a seed round. That was your pre-seed round that you raised at 2.6, and now you're looking at a seed round, right? That's how you're doing it. Okay. So, what are you raising, if you want to talk about it? If you would like to get some of my ecosystem also to discover it, you can always talk about it. So that's what I open up. So would you like to talk about it?
Yeah. So we're right now in the midst of raising close to $1 million in a seed round, where we're looking to raise a mix of equity and debt. We're raising debt about close to 2 CR to invest in our machinery and production to create new product line for exports. And then we are raising an equity round to invest in our team. So we want to expand our team in different parts of India. Right now, we only have a sales team in Bangalore and Delhi.
Right.
And parallel, we want to, as you asked, get further compliant and be as compliant as a globally recognized brand like a Saint Gobain or an Off, when it comes to drywall materials, so that if any architect, which we know for sure, there are a lot of them interested in a product outside, could find nothing which limits them from specing it. So it is fully, compliant and feasible to be used. At the same time, we are also looking to do some trade fairs and exhibitions in Europe. Because just to give you an example, Poland as a country in Europe that has more than 2,000 furniture factories and is the biggest exporter of furniture to the rest of the Europe. So we are already in talks to people who are using in bulk MDF plywood, and right now they might be importing it from China, from Turkey, or some other parts. And we do believe we can compete and give an equally competitive product in the price, but a lot more sustainable. So we want to, just do one or two trade fairs to make ourselves physically visible in those regions and onboard a long-term distributor in Eastern Europe as well.
Amazing. So one question I had, which was a very personal kind of understanding of how you are moving to other markets and vis-a-vis the Indian market. So, what is the cost of acquisition of a customer if you compare India versus any European country like a Poland, right? Just an example of I would like to say it's an East European kind of country, which is not as developed as a UK or a France or Italy, but yes, it has a market. It has been a erstwhile European country, which is now growing, which is showing its growth again, right? So that kind of capital that UK has, Poland does not have that kind of capital. So looking at these two markets, right, which is kind of one is a growth market, which is India, and the other one is a structured market, but finding its ground in the East European game right now. Again, a growth story in the European sector. What do you see? What is the cost of acquisition? Is it higher in India? Is it higher in Poland? How does it pan out for you? So, is it difficult for you to find a client there, or is it difficult for you to find a client which is the right client for you in India?
So I think the cost of acquisition actually depends on the channel.
Correct.
So first thing, if you're looking at project as a channel, and second is trade.
Right.
So for projects across geography, whether India or outside India, the cost of acquisition is high because you have to, have a bigger team that constantly keeps meeting architects, designers. The conversion cycle is longer. You also need to, incentivize consultants and other stakeholders in between. Whereas when it comes to distribution, I think it is really more about just, how aggressively can you, make yourself present. And the second is, what is your existing capacity to service? So one of the questions that you always get asked by a distributor, whether in India or Poland, would be what is your production capacity? So if they feel that your supply chain is, consistent and scalable, they would find it more comfortable to immediately, take a container load or truckload, and there you don't have to spend money to acquire them. It's essentially going to be like more of a travel cost of just going and meeting them once and onboarding them. But projects is much longer for sure. In terms of India and overseas, I would say currently, because European and Middle East market is a lot more mature market in terms of understanding sustainable products. The policies are already in place to incentivize everybody in the ecosystem to consider alternatives. It is actually much easier to find a customer there. So, just to, for example, give you like for last 12 months, in terms of customer acquisition, like what have we spent to acquire a customer in Europe? We must have done about close to 70 lakh of sales in last 12 months in Europe, which we would consider trial in our, uh, you know,
The scale of things.
ecosystem. And the cost to acquire that was really nothing. We've not even made a single trip there, no, not anybody from the team. This would be the first year that we'll actually go and meet some of the architects and meet our distributor in Italy, who's taken almost 3 containers from us till now. So it's actually been just a lot of mature conversation and the readiness of a product that has made them immediately, buy whether a trial order or a full container to test out, and then the product delivered, and that's what made them to be like, we want to, be long-term distributor. So I think the cost of acquisition and the time to acquire would be faster and cheaper in Europe. But obviously, as we all know, that India, in terms of its size, is just a far bigger market. So with time, as I said, another 3 to 5 years, um, with just the number of states and cities we have in India, you can almost have a distributor consuming as much in one, big city in India.
Correct.
How much?
Correct. So there is an opportunity in India which can be always be looked at. But one thing that I would obviously observe from your side, which is my observation, I might be wrong, would like to put it in front of you, is that in India, the best approach is to go through architects and large builders who own the whole process than to go with the individual building owners who are individual products, one project, one city kind of guys, because that might be difficult for you to enter. But through the architect, those same guys can go through the same products because the architect is able to sell your product in front of you. But in the UK or other countries, it might also be that the product company which is making products out of it, which is going into design expos and representing themselves as sustainable products, right, might be a good customer for you because they are not architects only, but they are also firms which are majorly evolved in terms of what is sustainable and how can we make products out of this sustainability and how can we become that extra leg to this product coming from India, right? So it might not be
Certain, because the demand is not that mature. You have to essentially create the category, which means that yes, you need to have a top-down approach. So if you go through premium architects, interior designers first in these tier one cities, they use it for right clientele, and that builds the reference. So then eventually, what happens? Let's say a distributor sitting in Indore, if you tell them that the product has gone in a Hero's office or a Taj hotel or Infosys office, it makes them easy to then sell it to a local, interior designer who might be doing a local office, or a hotel, not necessarily one of these branded. But knowing that those brands have taken it just builds the credibility for
So your
the
capacity building in India is fully structured. You are now able to so what is your capacity as per the maximum that you can deliver for a project, right? So is it dependent right now on a specific number, or is it expandable as needed?
So right now with the current capacity that we have, we can manufacture up to close to 50,000 square feet in a day, which translates to like two full truckloads, full containers, two full 25 metric ton trucks that can have about around anywhere around 1,200 to 1,300 sheets of 8 by 4. That's what we can do in a day. And if we translate that into further numbers in terms of top line, with the capacity that we have today, we can comfortably do a top line of 30 CR before, after which, or close to reaching that number, we would need to, start looking at onboarding one more
Right.
unit or partner to start additional manufacturing in capacity.
Which can be built up, because in the end I believe that orders can go in chunks of orders as well, so you can always build it while the project is going in, right?
Yeah.
Is that is possible, right? So your gestation period of expanding the capacity is how many months? Is it 2 months,
I
3?
mean, setting up a new factory from
Right.
scratch, calibrating an existing one, I would say anywhere from 3 to 6 months, we can have like additional equal amount of capacity.
Right, right. That is actually understandable when you have a project of that kind of money value, right? Right. Correct. So now just give me an understanding of the product and what are the benefits of the product for the end consumer, the whole value chain. So from upstream to downstream, please give me an understanding of what values do you add.
So, what we usually pitch to our customers, which are often architects, is that if they're using this product versus, let's say, a traditional plywood or MDF, what will happen is that the product is most importantly fire rated. So we have met the class of fire rating by European standards that you require for any interior grade material. So in India, for example, there are certain grade of plywood which are fire rated, but not all plywood or MDF that is there in the market is fire rated by default, and that's happened because of the silica present in the straw. Secondly, is that the load that the panels can take is double of what plaster board can take, which is gypsum boards. So if you are using it for wall application, the simplest way to understand is you can use half the material to address the same amount of wall area. So
Right.
usually two sheets of gypsum are used to install back to back together.
Correct.
Like a double skin is what it's called.
Right.
Then create the wall on a frame. So here instead of double skin, you can just put single skin of a panel, and you'll still be able to mount equal or more amount of load, like in terms of TV, air conditioners, or shelves on the wall. The product definitely, we've tried to engineer it in a way where the the rules of using it remains the same, which means that any regular contractor or carpenter with the same woodworking tools can install the material. So there's no essential learning curve, because if you make it difficult to install it physically at the site, then even if the product is affordable, it will make it more expensive at the installation end.
Right.
So it's not the case.
Right.
And lastly, our product has a property that no other engineered material has, which is that it is insulating in heat and sound both. And that's because it is made with straw, and straw is an actual insulator.
Like what is the rating of it for heat and noise? So what ratings do you have for?
So, our most basic panels can easily give a noise reduction coefficient of 0.5, and then it can go up to 1 or 0.95 as well. So, just for context, like our products have been installed in up to 500 seat auditoriums, recording studios, and individual pods as well for soundproofing.
Amazing, amazing. So that's the end consumer's value chain, right? So then, for the distributor in the middle, why would he move from other materials to you?
Depends again what kind of a distributor they are. If they're distributors who are dealing with premium customers, there's a clear opportunity for them to offer a product that is different, unique, gets their foot into the door, and not just offering just another MDF with two different shades, which means that they have a value to upsell it. Second is that we are really working upon. We already do have decent, but we will continue, giving more and more production capacity. That is the most important thing for a big dealer distributor. That they should feel safe and secure that if they're recommending this product, last minute the product should not be unavailable
Right.
if needed by their clientele.
Right.
So that's the most important thing. And third is that they want the same level of comfort in terms of quality and warranty. So we give 10-year of warranty on a product.
Right.
For termite, moisture, which makes it then which de-risks for them to use the product.
You end up replacing these panels so that's a replacement warranty, or how does that work? So what
Yeah,
kind
if
of-
there's a manufacturing defect, no questions asked, we replace the product.
Right, right, right. So give me an understanding of, now let's go back to the value chain upstream. Let's go upstream. So what kind of value are you adding to the ecology, the farmers? How are you adding value to that?
So when we buy these fibers as a raw material, which means that we pay for it, so there's nothing that we take for free.
Right.
Even though it is burned, and in a way it is easier to take it for free, but we have it from day one. So first thing is that uh, the amount of straw that we buy is immediately not going into the quantum that is getting burned, or one that is disposed of or decomposed by using a lot of water. So you're either reducing air pollution by it not being burnt, or you're reducing the consumption of water, which is a non-renewable resource, which is needed to decompose it quickly and put it back into the ground. Second is that when you're buying it, then you're paying for it. So a farmer can easily make around 10 to 12% more on their seasonal income, besides selling the crop, also selling the residue.
Right.
So that's a benefit to the farmer on it. And third is that the long-term way of us that we want to scale is it's having a decentralized footprint in terms of production units. So we want to not have like just two big factories to address the entire market in India and Europe, but actually have small factories, spread around different parts of the country, because India is that way uniquely suited that we are an agricultural country and there's almost a residue available in all part of the country.
Right.
So you don't have to be limited to one part. And that actually then further optimizes your cost because the transportation gets better. So the landing becomes more optimized.
More optimal.
So that will again create more jobs in different parts of the country, not just like, just one zone.
So looking at your product, I had a very simple question. So this product can be the lowest ticket size that you have served till now. Please tell me about what is the smallest project and what is the largest project that you've done till now.
Sure. So I would say the smallest ticket size would be like selling as little as 2 sheets, which is, let's say, maybe 4,000 rupees for a project.
And you're able to execute it now as well?
Yeah, I mean, so this has been a policy from day one that we have not kept an MOQ.
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested and they're willing to pay for the transportation out of anywhere except these 4 tier 1 cities, they've supplied a product. So we've supplied it all the way till Kargil and Ladakh as well, where people have shown interest. And the largest single order value would be of close to, I think, 75 lakhs.
Okay. Okay. Right. And that was serviced in India, or was it?
Yeah, serviced in India. Outside India, single largest order value would be 25 lakhs.
Okay. Till now, because you're obviously in this making the market right now, you're presenting yourself. So from making the market right now in other European countries and other geographies, how much time do you think that the roadmap is to get into the kind of flow of distribution in that country where you are able to just deliver as per the build demand? So how have you calculated your previous experiences? How have you looked at market entry?
So as I said, in last 12 months, we have supplied to 4 different countries in Europe, UK, and Singapore and Asia Pacific. And we do believe that now that we have 80% of the compliance in place, the rest is also in the process It should take us anywhere around, let's say, 30 to 45 days to onboard one new distributor in a certain country in Europe. Same goes for countries like Singapore or Middle East. Thirdly, we have onboarded a consultant as well based out of UK to work with us for a value added category, which is acoustic soundproofing.
Right.
So that actually reduces our timelines because they're already the one who has been onboarded for the project to recommend a good product. So when they take the risk and the liability that the product will perform, you close the cycle much faster. So just to give an example, we closed an order in less than 7 days in Qatar, which is our first supply to Middle East. Um, that partner. So yeah, I mean, I think if in a quarter you
It's
can
going
come.
in the right direction, and it is showing that in the next 6 months you will have another big order, which will tell you that the market is entered from your international markets, and you have shown that number right to build. So that is on game because your structures are there. So that is one
Yes.
thing that I've observed. Apart from that, so looking at this whole product market fit that you have right now, right? In that question, so when you have a product and it reaches the market for you, do you also do specific treatments to the product as per specific projects, or do you just give the standardized product, they do the next level of value addition?
So we work both ways, again, based on the clientele. So a lot of, just for explaining it to your ecosystem, like when we are dealing with architects who are doing a lot of workspaces, let's say co-working spaces,
Right.
GCC
Right.
centers, IT offices, there's always a big contractor who has all the infrastructure to do value addition in terms of finish, coatings, laminates. So they would just procure the plain basic panel from you. And then when there are small scale projects, let's say of an institution, a school, college, home theaters, where the contractors do not have that kind of infrastructure at their end, and these projects are also done at a very short timeline, there the client would want you to supply the finished product. So then we do that as well. So we do have the in-house capacity to do like wood CNC coatings, paints, pressing a laminate or a skin on the panel. So based on the client that we have, we do both. Same goes for export to the Italian partner. We just supply the basic panels. They have the capacity to do these additional finishes based on the
Right.
client's requirement.
Right.
And the second that we are working with the consultant based out of UK, since those are projects and it is going directly into the project on his recommendation, what we send is a finished product so that we can take the entire, performance guarantee that it will perform for that sound requirement that they have. So we then supply a finished product.
So you are very positive of giving that finished product to the customer, so that that question mark of they trusting us in the value addition part of it, or anything that is making their decision to delay, you can just solve it there and then. But okay, I can do this and I can align with this, and this is the value addition and the cost associated with the value addition, right?
Yes.
This is how you do it. Right, right, right. So, looking at your roadmap, you raising a 1 million round right now. You are a product which already has a supply chain, and it is growing leaps and bounds in terms of your introductions. You are structuring it in a very structured approach, uh, and you are showing some profitability visuals as well, where you are saying that there is of 5% profitability margin that you can achieve as you reach every break even for every project that you get. So you can, on an annual basis, you can obviously reach profitability metrics as well, which is an amazing part to know. Now looking at your team structure, so what is your team structure? How do you structure yourself as a company?
So we're a private limited company day one. We got registered in 2018 in June. We have a full-time team of about 10 of us. We're split between operations, business development, and product development. So I head sales and BD for both sport and domestic. And then, as I mentioned, we have people in our team as part of the domestic sales. We have additional channel partners who are not on a payroll, but we give them commissions or reduced channel partner price to sell our product, and that's how we do our project sales.
Right.
We've just onboarded a senior person to handle our trade sales who has 2 to 3 decades of experience in big companies like Greenply and Greenlam. And when it comes to operations, it is head by Shansh and her team. So he has a dual degree in supply chain and logistics from Arizona and 7 years of experience working in India as well. before joining us. So he takes care of the production, quality check, logistics. He has 2 more people in his team. And then we have Manu, who heads R&D and product development.
Right.
So he has 2 decades plus experience with psychoacoustics material design.
Right.
And he was in Bose for 6 to 8 years as head of the design.
Right.
And then he worked with a European company, and after that he joined us. So he takes care of all the compliances, testing, whatever you need for different countries, to position the product well. So that's how like the 3 of us lead different functions in
Right.
the company.
Right. So that's a good thing to know that the structure is also there. So the team is also very subject matter experts of their own domain. Um, have you thought about carbon credit markets as well to trade your carbon credits that you have already got rated, and I think you've got your carbon credit rating as well, that okay, this is how my 1 ton of carbon credits are being made. Is that true?
So, yes and no. First, what we have gotten in place is carbon footprint analysis. So that is life cycle assessment. So
Right.
what we know tangibly is this is the footprint. This is how much carbon either is mitigated or generated by a product.
To the
Now,
process of production, right? The whole process,
yeah.
the whole
Now, the second thing is carbon credit. So currently, the way the carbon markets work is that there has to be a accepted framework for any project to be approved for carbon credit, and then the voluntary market can pay for it if they want. So yet in India there's not been a framework under which we can showcase that the amount of carbon that we are mitigating, or it is being stored in the building material, can lead to credits. But there are 2 3 case studies of companies, bio-based companies, doing that in Europe. So we are hoping to, this year do our own research on it and see how to get ready for that. Because yes, India will also have its own carbon credit policy this year. So
Right.
yes, definitely what
Policy will come this year. The policy will come this year, but the markets will be there around, will function completely, I think, 2 years from now.
yeah.
I
So, but
they-
at least like as Europe, like which is like a proper market for carbon credit,
Correct.
there is the right framework. We definitely want to understand that better this year and see how to get in. And seeing that 1 or 2 companies are already doing is a good sign
Correct.
for us.
So one of the startups I invested into was RenewCred, which is into credit ratings and how to measure your credits and getting you ready with the certifications for the market. So if you would like to get introduced, I would love to introduce you to the founder there. He would like, if he, we'll try to find time for you in terms of making you understand what a carbon credit is. So that is something that I'll do for you. And this guy is very celebrated. He's also presenting himself in the UK as well, because of the market. The buying market in is structured through the UK for the European and the US market. So the whole agencies that come in the middle to buy these carbon credits are based out of the UK majorly. But yes, the major business owned, the people behind the buying of it, the industrial buying, is all across the world, but it routes to the markets in the UK as well, right? So this is why he's also expanding. So I would love to introduce you to that guy. Apart from that, just give us an understanding of what challenges did you face in building. So your startup has reached a point where it is showing a structure of growth right now, right? The structure of growth is what everyone aspires to become, right, as a business. So to reach that, you must have gone through the 10 lakh to 1 million. What were the challenges that you faced? What were something that our startup founders can learn from you?
I mean, you definitely do exist in like slightly,
Right.
I would say, a different category in terms of industry. But I would say that the biggest challenge has been in the start to balance demand and supply both, because as a new product, where there's no existing demand, especially I'm considering India as a market. In that case, you have to parallelly, like you have to build demand and then service it, or create demand and then service it with the back end. And it's always like in chicken and egg problem. So you sometimes
Right.
have to like build more supply before you can service
Correct.
any demand, because people just want to see that you have a capacity, but that means that you're also taking risk in building the supply, not knowing that the demand will kick in. So I think that's been that that delicate dance that we have to figure out year on year for good 4 5 years, to keep seeing us, to keep showcasing ourselves as a mature company that can deliver, but at the same time not sit on a very high inventory of dead stock.
Right.
And then have that as a challenge. So I think that's been like the biggest case for us. And now where, as I said, we definitely have more supply than we can demand, like than the demand, but it
Right.
is not sitting in a way where, it is like dead inventory. It is the capacity that we have built. But yeah, we don't have to manufacture and be sitting on it. So the good thing with our industry also is that what you're manufacturing is not something that has a short shelf life. Like
Correct.
this is not culture,
Correct.
like, the fresh produce. So it has a very long shelf life,
Right.
which we keeps
Right. Right.
us. And that's why, as I said, to cater to that capacity that we have now, we're looking for bigger distributors, both in India and Europe, and people can take consistent rotational supply while project sales keeps happening.
So the
So
program has also structured itself for you. So now you know that downstream is what you have to work on. The upstream is already sorted for you.
yes.
Right. Which is amazing that you have, you know which risk to take now. Apart from that, the other risk is already mitigated in some sense of the.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, as an entrepreneur, you entered entrepreneurship just after your course, right? So you directly went into entrepreneurship, or did you work for someone before going to?
I just worked for a year, as I mentioned, in New York
Yes.
for a PMC firm. That was hardly for 12 months. And after that, the fellowship for a year,
Mm.
and I started structure right after that.
Right. So you are an entrepreneur from the day 365, right? To look at the first day of going into entrepreneurship to now, how do you think, what is the characteristic of an entrepreneur that you have observed in yourself or in your team that has led to this 4 years or 5 years of a journey that you've had? And you're still growing in the right direction, structure is coming in. What is entrepreneurship in terms of your definition?
I mean, it's been, I think, 7 years of being doing this full time, though we've been in the market, as I mentioned, fully for last 4.5 years.
Yes.
I think the biggest characteristic to me that is valuable is resilience, because especially when you're getting into new product categories, new markets, you have to also be patient. We knew that we are not, we're not creating something that is talk of the town or is part of the buzzwords that are there. We still like sustainability is now growing and growing, but it is still not the word. Like right now, AI would be that. Before that, when it comes to sustainable space as well, it's still EV and renewable energy. So when you're not building in the category which is already the most demand, generating industry, you have to be really patient.
Right.
And keep, as you said, building the right processes and foundation so that when the demand kicks in, when there is that, right moment, you are actually ready to service it. Because these are hardware businesses, these are not, and because these are businesses that can last very long if done right. So I think that clarity I did had, and that's also because of my family background, because my dad has been in business, not manufacturing or hardware, but trade, but still just learning that, you have to think long term, patiently. So I think resilience would be one, and definitely being optimistic that, there is demand, even if it's slow, and it will compound. And we are seeing the benefit of that in all countries, including India. But that was not the case in 2018.
Right.
Oh,
So amazing. So, if you knew that my audience is investors and other people who are into co-working spaces and buildings which are into, there is a lot of sustainability in my audience. There is a lot of building materials in my ecosystem, and then there are a lot of investors who are looking at investing in promising startups which are structured and in the right zone at the right time, following a mega trend. And I believe the mega trend in your case now is that the attitude of India will very soon change to this, because the attitude in the UK, which I have seen. So, for example, there is an event that happens. I think you must be also knowing. There's a design expo that happens in London. Every year it happens twice, right? And you go there, the whole design expo at a scale which is equal to a large scale in India is everything about sustainability. There's nothing else being talked about. Everyone has their first word as sustainable materials, soundproofing, lights, covers, everything is sustainable materials, soundproofing, the same characteristics that your materials can also provide, right? And you just have to motivate yourself into moving into not only straight sheets but also curved lampshades and all those kind of amazingness to build a product in the future to become a full interior company, right? Interior solutions company with sustainable materials, right? That is one way of looking at things. So looking at this audience, what is your ask from this audience, which is one side building materials and the other side building material users, as well as the private equity fund managers and other startups? So what is your ask? Whichever one you want to choose, you can choose one or you can choose two, and just tell me what would you like to ask from them.
I mean, one thing we always tell any user or potential user is that you don't have to start with the biggest use case. You actually
Yeah.
start with the low hanging fruit, which means that if you have a, let's say, 10,000 square feet co-working space
Right.
coming up,
Right.
the most non-risky thing to experiment with would be the ceilings or the furniture instead of the wall,
Right.
or the door. So you start there. As I said, right, we have done our first small orders for architects as little as 50,000, 1 lakh, where, instead of the entire office, only one meeting room uses this product. And as I said, because the product is versatile in look and feel, at the end of the day, all your meeting rooms will still look the same. But you start somewhere, it's a physical product, it's a tactile product. So you use it, and that gives you the most confidence than any test report. To the investors in the room, I would say, like, this is a business that has a massive market opportunity. Like, if I talk about that, in India, every year we consume about $20 billion of engineered material, which is a combination of plywood, MDF, and plasterboard. Poland, just as a single country, that it manufactures most amount of furniture for Europe, does anywhere at the tune of $4 billion.
Right.
So there's massive opportunity in being in building material space, because any and every industry can slow down, but if any economy has to grow, they have to keep building. And this part of the world, which is Asia Pacific, where India is crucial member, we still have to build 70% of our buildings, whether it's a home or an office or a hotel. So there's only going to be more and more demand, and if the product has already reached a nice sweet spot of features and pricing, I think we can build a lot of value for all stakeholders, including investors.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, looking forward to what you're raising. So, I would love to have some information, some thesis from you if you're up for it. The second part is I would love to see your catalog as well, because I have some of my small projects which I would like to start with. I'm making a podcasting studio in one place of ours, and I'm looking at soundproofing or through the ceiling, hanging materials through the ceiling, which can also be used for a hall, which is a large hall. So some soundproofing, some absorption of sound in that hall might just increase the value that people get out of that hall. So would love to see how we can execute those as well. Apart from that, would love to see your deck, right?
Sure.
Would love to understand. Right. So pleasure, Shriti. It was a very nice meeting, and I would love to tell my audience that this is a mega trend. Sustainability is now going to become one communication that will happen in the next 1 to 2 years, become the ask from everyone, because like founders like her who have actually worked on the costings and made it so sustainably available to you, and the costings that can match a legacy execution as well, so that you can make a very informed decision, and the adoption is very easy because of her product and the way she manages her supply chain. So looking at this mega trend, it might just change us to move towards materials which are good for the environment, and the star in this game today is structure, and Shriti Pandey building a product out of India for the world. Uh,
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you, Shruti. Thank you. You've been listening to Impact Tech Studio podcast. Shriti Pandey's journey reminds us that powerful innovation often begins with empathy and lived experience. From bootstrapping with just rupees 10 lakhs to building globally exported straw-based construction materials, Structure Eco is redefining sustainability in the built environment. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, share it with your network, and stay tuned for more founders building real-world impact. Until next time, keep building with purpose.